right, welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight on this Friday, June 17th, 2016. We have a lot we want to talk about. We're going to cover most of these stories coming up in the longer segments. So I want to talk about the watch list. Who's watching the government? You know, that's the old saying, the old philosophical saying, who watches the watchers? These are secret processes. And what we see coming out being revived is nothing new. It was put to us last August by Dianne Feinstein, Rhino neocon extraordinaire, Peter King. And of course, this is nothing new throughout history. We've always had the government with its secret courts, with its star chamber processes, accusing people in secret. This is the hallmark of totalitarianism. This is what was written, what Kafka wrote about in his novels, okay? What we're looking at with these watch lists is the most possible thing, dangerous thing that could happen to us. You need to be concerned about that far more than firearms. And I want to talk about, you know, we've heard that the Orlando shooting was the deadliest mass shooting in the United States history. No, actually it wasn't, okay? It wasn't. Think about Wounded Knee, okay? How many people died in Wounded Knee? Well, that happened in 1890. You had the U.S. cavalry attack a village of Indians, men, women, and children in a genocidal manner, shooting and killing everybody that was there. 150 Lakota in a single incident, okay, so they could get their land, right? We've had more recently, we've had the Waco shooting. We had 82 members of the Branch Davidians were murdered by our government. I believe deliberately after a long siege, they decided they were fed up with it, burned them out, just like the Nazis burned out the Jews who were resisting them in the Warsaw Ghetto. Both events occurred on April the 19th. Maybe that's just a coincidence. Maybe not. Maybe that was a message that was sent. So that was 82 at Waco, 150 at Wounded Knee. And of course, there's been other atrocities, hate crimes that were done in the past. We had, this is an article from Mint Press. They talk about how, you know, 49 people killed in Orlando, but there's been incidents where African Americans were targeted, okay? 1917, at least 100 were killed in East St. Louis in one night. Another incident, anywhere from 55 to 300 blacks were massacred in Tulsa, Oklahoma in just 16 hours in June of 1921. Because, see, they didn't have guns. There were those Jim Crow laws that kept guns away from black people. The Indians didn't have guns to defend themselves when the cavalry attacked them. And, of course, they used the pretense of guns to come after those at Waco, even though it was simply over a license for firearms. That's what the siege began with. But they did this full-blown attack, called up the media, said, hey, y'all, come watch this. We're going to show you how our SWAT team operates. And, of course, they'd had many incidents where they had served them with warrants peacefully, the local sheriff. But no, the BATF wanted to come in and do it. The key word was showtime. That's when we're going to kick off the raid, showtime. We're going to show everybody how powerful we are. And they were paranoid, and they shot back and killed some agents. That began the siege, and then they just burned the place down. So, you know, when we talk about this, and we talk about the government murdering people, and it's not even the number of people that they murdered, because immediately preceding Waco, of course, we had Ruby Ridge, where an FBI hostage team sniper shot a woman who was holding a baby in her arms at what for a sniper was point-blank range. It was a very close range. Shot her right in the forehead. She slumped to the ground on her knees, still holding the baby, dead. Okay? So you want to talk about atrocities? You want to talk about what you should really be afraid of? It's democide. It's our government killing people. That's why we have the Second Amendment. It's to keep them from doing it. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. In the next segment, we're going to have Rob Dew and Leanne McAdoo join me. We're going to be talking about the watch list and other issues about gun control. I guess we'll have the team of Dew and McAdoo coming in here. So let me start this off by catching you up on current events. We had yesterday the end of a filibuster by Democrats to try to bring to the table legislation that would tie these secret watch lists to gun control. It would be basically a no-buy list for people who were put on this watch list. Now, is this going to pass? Well, NPR says they think that it's unlikely. They're going to vote on 4 gun control measures Monday evening. NPR doesn't think any of those are going to go through. We got an article from Kurt Nimmo at Infowars.com. Passage of Democrat gun bill violating our due process is unlikely in the Senate. He says it's uncertain if Feinstein's bill and competing legislation sponsored by Senator John Cornyn of Texas will receive the 60 votes required unless a deal is reached. Feinstein's legislation would permit the federal government to deny individuals on a secret terrorist watch list the right to exercise the Second Amendment if authorities decide there's a reasonable belief that the weapon could be used in connection with terrorism. Cornyn said negotiations in the Senate failed because Feinstein thought due process of law and the Constitution were not necessary. So Cornyn's version of legislation would keep constitutional protections in place. It would allow the government to put a gun purchase on hold for 72 hours. Prosecutors would then be able to convince a judge that there was probable cause in order to permanently block a sale. See, what's happening with this is there's a lot of pressure. We got people like Piers Morgan coming after Donald Trump and doing an editorial immediately after the shooting saying, come on, Donald, come on, NRA, it's time you guys gave up some of your freedoms. We have to do something about this shooting. And they're listening. The NRA and Donald Trump have tweeted out that they're going to talk about doing something in the interest of national security about this terrorist watch list. And that should concern us all. Because what we're seeing now is a movement by both the left and the right to enact new gun control laws. This effort that we have here by John Cornyn with all of the bluster about how we're going to have due process and everything, process is a bunch of nonsense. Because quite frankly, if somebody is on a terror watch list, we should be asking what that is. I want to go back to an article here that goes back to December of this last December 2015. The LA Times, not exactly a Second Amendment publication, folks. These are people who don't like the Second Amendment. They say, should people on the no-fly list be able to buy guns? They said, yes. Because you know what? If you don't do that, you're going to be punishing people before you give them due process. You know, you have a secret list that you're creating, and then you're going to, on the basis of that secret list, you're going to punish people. They say it seems simple enough if the federal government, based on intelligence or on policing, puts a person on its watch list of suspected terrorists or decrees that he or she is too dangerous to be allowed on an airplane, then surely it would also be foolish to let that person buy a firearm in the U.S. It makes sense, doesn't it? Because that's the argument we've heard over and over again from Imam Obama. He says that was a thrust of a proposed law by Senator Dianne Feinstein that her Senate colleagues rejected last week. The idea was resuscitated by Imam Obama in his Oval Office address on that Sunday evening. He said, what could possibly be the argument for allowing a terrorist suspect to buy a semi-automatic weapon? They said the problem is the people on the no-fly list, as well as the people who are on the broader terror watch list from which it's drawn, have not been convicted of doing anything wrong. See, the punishment doesn't fit the crime. The punishment precedes the crime. We are combining the worst aspects of our most dystopian science fiction all together here in one place. We've got elements of George Orwell. We've got elements of Franz Kafka. We've got elements of Philip K. Dick and his Minority Report pre-crime. All these things are being brought together in a hellish tyranny that's going to be controlled by a government that watches and controls your every move. Don't think that they're not going to use these watch lists to deny you complete movement in this country. The TSA is the Transportation Administration, okay? Not the Airport Administration. Security, safety, whatever the S stands for. I could care less. It's a total lie. It's a total fraud. They're not providing security or safety for anybody. And it is about transportation. And they're going to be taking control of the automobiles. Everything in the next few years with technology. So they're going to be able to shut you down completely, not just control whether or not you get firearms. We have to be focused on the watch list. We have to watch the watchers. Why are they putting people on this list? How do you get on it? How do you get off? Where's the due process? Where is the Constitution? When we come back, we're going to be joined by Dew and McAdoo, and we're going to talk about these watch lists. We're watching. Stay with us. Watch us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host, and joining me right now are Rob Dew and Leanne McAdoo. We're going to talk about these super secret watch lists and what you should be afraid of. Before we get to that discussion, real quickly, I want to remind you of the sales that we have at Infowars.com. We have 20% off all Alexa Pure water filters at InfoWarsStore.com. That includes everything from our large systems, the super high-quality gravity-fed Alexa Pure Pro water filtration system, all the way down to the shower filters. All of the Alexa Pure water filter products are 20% off right now at InfoWarsStore.com. Also, we have a new special, the Tim Kennedy special, and that's 15% off Super Male Vitality, Brain Force, and Secret 12 at InfoWarsLife.com. Why those three products? Well, those are three products that Tim Kennedy uses in his Special Forces and UFC training. He trains like a top-flight professional athlete, because with just UFC, he is a top-flight professional athlete, but of course he's also in Special Forces. He said that these products he felt were especially helpful. He's talked to Alex about that. We've got hundreds of five-star reviews on those products, and again, you can get Tim Kennedy's preferences right there, his favorite products, Super Male Vitality, Brain Force, and Secret 12, 15% off right now at InfoWarsLife.com. Well, Rob and Leanne, I got to say, just real quickly before we get back into the watch list stuff, are you aware that the Senate has now approved women having to register for the draft? So now women have equality in slavery.
Wow.
That's part of the NDAA. And of course,
I knew that was coming. Yeah,
it hasn't become law yet because it still has to go to the House. The House has previously rejected women as slaves, and so now they're going to go back and revisit that issue. But again, I just have to say, my parents' generation, nobody had to hold a gun to anybody's head to get them to join the fight after Pearl Harbor. If you've got a justified war, if your country has been attacked or whatever, and I understand the basis of Pearl Harbor. I know that FDR had people step down. I know that to that degree, what was going on. Nevertheless, people who were there, they understood at that point they were in it. They were in a fight for their lives, just like we're seeing with the war on terror. You know, you create this situation, and then once the shooting starts, you got to pick up a gun. And
or once you have the false flag.
Once you got the false flag,
like with 9/11, people can say what they want about it. There's something fishy going on there, but that caused a lot of people, Joe Biggs included, who saw that and said, I want to go fight. And who was the football player, the Arizona Cardinal? Who ended up getting killed after he decided, he's like, wait, I'm fighting for the wrong people and for the wrong reasons.
That's right.
And we're running drugs. I forget his name, Pat Tillman.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm watching Game of Thrones right now, and it's just the same thing over and over and over again, except for back then they could just say, give us all your men in the village and they're going to go fight our war for us. It's the same thing here, but now they have to find new ways to convince people to go and fight their wars. That's
right. If you've got a clear cause, if it's justified, or even if you've got a good backstory with a false flag, you don't need a draft. But, what we should be afraid of, very afraid of, is the fact that they are so anxious to
start a war with Russia.
Start a war. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you guys do some computer stuff, and they tell us that it's from Russia. We don't know that it's from Russia. I mean, most of the Aaron Schwartz,
paid Russian hacker who's really a CIA double agent. It could be any number of things.
That's right.
And that's not even a violent act, although it leaves too much open ground. To start something that the only way to finish it is an all-out war, and that's something I don't think 90% of the people want.
No, nobody wants, but they're really gearing us up for it.
And no real control over it either. If they're just going to tell us, there was this cyber attack, and so now we're going to have a physical war. Let's start World War III because there was a cyber attack here. Let's get to the watch list, because this is very key. This is the LA Times that I was reading from, talking about how the problem is, how do you get on the no-fly list? I mean, we're operating from the assumption here, the NRA. Let me read you what the NRA is saying here. The NRA statement on terror watch lists. And this is from their legal organization, the Institute for Legislative Action. So this is the NRA-ILA. They say the NRA believes terrorists should not be allowed to purchase or possess firearms, period. Oh, who's going to disagree with that? Question is, who is a terrorist? Who gets to define what a terrorist is? And they say anyone on a terror watch list who tries to buy a gun should be thoroughly investigated by the FBI, and the sale should be delayed while the investigation is ongoing. And that's the legislation that's being offered by Texas Senator Cornyn. in opposition to Dianne Feinstein, which would just basically say, well, as long as, whatever, we're just going to use it to do gun control. The NRA continues and says, if an investigation uncovers evidence of terrorist activity or involvement, the government should be allowed to immediately go to court, block the sale, and arrest the terrorist. And I look at this and it's like, wait a minute.
And arrest the terrorist.
They've got a lot of steps.
He's already a terrorist.
There's a lot of steps in due process that they left out here.
Yeah.
And the steps that they've got are in the wrong order. The punishment doesn't come first. And you don't become a terrorist because somebody accuses you secretly and puts you on a secret watch list that you don't know anything about. We've had people like Ted Kennedy put on a terror watch list and told that he was not able to fly. It turned out it was a T. Kennedy, and it took it took Senator Kennedy 3 weeks to get his name cleared. Now, in that particular case, I would say maybe it was justified.
It was.
I would say that because politically, I don't agree with him, and that's what this is going to become. It's going to become an instrument of political oppression. Okay, not that I would do that to somebody because I disagree with them politically. I was joking about that, but that's precisely what they will do. We've been told this is about domestic right-wing extremists more than it is about Islamic terrorists. How many times do they have to tell us that? And we were told that again this week by Jay Johnson, Homeland Security.
And Art Acevedo.
Yeah, Art Acevedo, yeah. He's like, hey, let me remind you.
guys.
Yeah, yeah, they're at a meeting, and our police chief here, they have this meeting, and he's like little Mr. Brown-Noser. Oh, let me remind you, Mr.
The
Johnson.
real problem here.
Yeah, we know who the real people are that we're after.
Shift the narrative back around. Well, it's just like the leaked DNC talking points that we are seeing with showing all the Trump opposition and how they have the timeline for the talking points they're going to use to take out Trump. Well, this is sort of the same thing because they saw this as their opportunity for the no-fly, no-buy, and they're really rolling that out as the talking point, even though it would not have stopped this terror attack. It has nothing to do with what happened in Orlando.
In fact, one of the gun shops he went to get bulk ammunition and body armor, level 3 body armor, they notified the FBI. They did what they were supposed to do. They said, this seems fishy. Hey, red flag, red flag, red flag. And what happened? FBI obviously did nothing. They sat on it for one reason or another. I don't know. Either they're incompetent or they did it on purpose. I don't know.
You have a fellow worker with him that alerted the world's largest private security firm and said, hey, this guy's making all kinds of hateful remarks about all these different groups of people. He wants to kill everybody. Oh, we're not going to do anything because he's a Muslim. It would be politically incorrect to do it. So the private security firm, the state government, the federal government, Homeland Security, all these people have had this guy in their crosshairs for the longest period of time and let him go.
But David, now they're going to fix it. Now they can fix it if they could just get the guns. Your guns, my guns, and your guns, and everybody who's not a government official, if they can get their guns, it'll solve the problem.
But see, the thing is, we have to be worried about, it's not gun control, but it's border patrol. If a terrorist comes into the country, or if we import them by the tens of thousands like Imam Obama is doing, okay, you're going to have a situation. Yeah, you're going to have a situation. Yeah, that's the headline on Drudge today. We got this Middle Eastern lady that was apprehended at the border that had a pipeline plans, okay? So if you're a terrorist and you come into this country, do you really want a semi-automatic rifle, or would you rather have a nuclear weapon, a biological weapon, a chemical weapon, or maybe just blow up our infrastructure, the gas infrastructure? I mean, if you the problem is somebody who wants to create a crime like that. It isn't the weapon, okay? And that's not going to be the most lethal weapon that they get.
And she was someone on the refugee program.
Yeah,
one apprehended.
There you go.
So, yeah, I mean, these are people that need our help, and we're aiding them in
helping to destroy
this country.
So I did a quick look. I put children on no-fly lists, and it brought up hundreds of articles. I just printed out a few. The first one from Associated Press back in 2006. 4-year-old turns up on no-fly list. So this is a 4-year-old, okay? Then here's Mikey, who they just had on there. Mikey's the Boy Scout, Mikey Hicks. Back in 2010, the U.S. had him on the watch list, the terror watch list, no-fly list. Then we've got... here's an 18-month-old baby yanked from airplane for being on no-fly list. 18-month-old baby. Like there's no logic being based on what they're doing.
Look at that face,
it's
little terror.
Yeah.
Grab that pacifier. Take that right out of her mouth. Yeah.
TSA detains 5-year-old because his name was on the no-fly list.
So these are these bumbling fools that they're like, well, I don't know, 5-year-old, your name's on the list.
Exactly. And then in 2014, an Oregon judge said, we got to stop this no-fly list. This is ridiculous. And it was 14 plaintiffs came forward and said, look, we don't know how we get on. We don't know how we get off. He tried to stop it, but here still 2016, Canadian 6-year-old still on no-fly list despite government's help. And I did find out how you get on the no-fly list. Check out this criteria. Okay, they don't want to base it. They say they don't base it on anything that includes freedom of speech or exercise of religion or peaceful assembly. But that can be superseded, such as if the individual expresses sympathy toward a group the U.S. government considers to be a terrorist organization, or a student of a school or university that employs professors or other staff who are known to espouse ideologies and beliefs the U.S. deems radical.
Oh, yeah.
So that's how you get
radical
on the list. Anything radical
that the U.S. deems.
And just understand that all across Europe, anybody who opposes the European Union, who opposes the open borders, they're all called radical extremists.
Yeah.
Okay. So all you have to do is just be politically opposed to open borders and the destruction of your sovereignty in your country, and you're immediately an enemy of the state, an enemy of the globalist state. And that's what really should concern us. You know, we've got here's an article. 9 out of 10 people on the terror watch list who sought guns were approved in 2015, says CNN. Oh, you think that might be a problem? Well, no, actually, the FBI says, no, there's a reason for that. And it was just, the FBI was just overridden by the Department of Justice. They said, we don't want to have the no-fly list be used as a gun ban. The FBI said that. Why would they say that? Well, they said, we're doing an investigation with these people, and we've got them on this list, and we don't want to alert them if we're actually doing an investigation to see if this person is a terrorist. If they go in and try to buy a gun, as it is right now, we get notified, but we don't block the gun sale because we want to do part of our investigation. You're going to tip them off. So the Obama Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, has now overruled the FBI director because he's under her and said, no, we're going to do it. Not giving no explanation as to
that's exactly what they did with the underwear bomber. They were notified by his father and other people that this guy was being radicalized. He was given a bomb, incidentally, that didn't work on purpose. And then Undersecretary of State Patrick Kennedy testified before Congress that they did not block his travel visa because they wanted to see who he was working with. And then this incident happens and they go, oh, body scanners. Oh, we just happen to have them here. And here's the former DHS head who happens to run the company that sells body scanners. It's so amazing.
Convenient.
It always happens. They say, we've been watching this guy for a long time. You hear that every time. You heard it in France. You heard it everywhere. This is a known wolf, not a lone wolf only, but a known wolf. They do that constantly. But if it was a legitimate investigation, I mean, this is not even, what he's saying is, besides the Constitution, besides the principles of the Constitution, you don't even have a good pragmatic reason for doing this. Because if we're doing legitimate investigations of people who are terrorists, who are criminals, who are plotting something, we don't want to alert them. So even the people who buy this official government narrative should look at this and say, this doesn't make any sense from a pragmatic standpoint. Forget the Constitution. It just doesn't make any good sense from an investigation. But we know it's been used over and over again to allow these episodes to go forward because it fits their political agenda.
Right. And if everyone's asking, well, the FBI knew about this guy, why didn't they do anything the many countless times? Is this why? Because they were wanting to see who he was talking to, where he was going, and then, you know, maybe he just acted a little too quickly for them to stop him.
Well, they pulled him off those lists a couple years ago. But they also include dead people on the no-fly list. Maybe Omar is now on the no-fly list.
Yeah, now
that he's dead.
Retroactively on the no-fly list.
Because they do that in case people try to use assumed names. So dead people, children, anybody. And then we interviewed back in 2012 Wade Hicks, who was flying around.
First stories I covered.
Yeah, he was flying around, and a 34-year-old Mississippi resident was going to visit his wife, who was a Navy lieutenant stationed in Okinawa. And on his way back, he was basically stopped in Hawaii, and he couldn't.
He was on his way there.
He was on his way there.
He never got to see her because they detained him in Hawaii. I mean, you get into Hawaii, and they put you on a no-fly list. He flew there on a military plane. And then they transferred the planes, and he's going to the second leg going to Japan. And they come on the plane as it's about to take off and say, you, come with us.
Yeah, very
Took him off, said, you're on a no-fly list. You can't. It's like, what's going on? This guy had been vetted by the TSA. He had all kinds of licenses and privileges from them. He had been vetted for firearms and all these other types of things. No explanation given to him. And, of course, they pull you off in Hawaii. You're stuck if you can't fly. I mean, it's like, how am I going to get out of here? Am I going to catch a slow freighter out of here or whatever? But they kept him there for a couple of weeks. He never got to see his wife. Eventually, because it became a big issue, we covered it. The military stepped down, and they put him out. But here's the deal. They would never tell him why he was on the list. They would never tell him how he could get off the list or whether he was still on the list.
He was still on it. And we have that video right now, so you can actually hear from his mouth. Back in 2012, you know, what this guy had to go through. It was from our old studio. This is David Knight, vintage David Knight from 2012. So let's roll that video.
if you're in that type of situation, you have to keep your head screwed on straight. Don't get emotional and just do whatever you know or what you think is the best thing to do. And for me, it was going to the media, going to my friends, because those were really the only people that were going to be able to help me. The government wasn't going to do anything to help me. They were just doing their whole bureaucratic nightmare stuff. So I could have been there 3 months had I not been as proactive as I was trying to get this story out.
That's right, and they still, to this day, have not given you any information as to why you were put on the list or what your current status is, whether you're on the list or whether you're off of the list, right?
No, they've never, I've asked for it in writing. They've never given me anything in writing to say that I was on the list. They never gave me anything that says I was off the list. And it completely throws everything we know about the Constitution and due process out the window.
Yeah, it's a very dangerous situation, not just for you, but for everybody. Because when the government can secretly accuse somebody of something, you still have no idea what they thought was wrong.
Okay, you can see the rest of that when we come. If you want to go to the Alex Jones channel, you can look that up.
This is an interesting quote from Lindsey Graham, our favorite senator here. He says, we got a lot of favorite senators.
Just went to Bilderberg. Just went to Bilderberg.
That's right, at Bilderberg.
Confirmed sighting at the airport. So
here's what Lindsey Graham says. He says, the only way you should get off the list is if they no longer believe you're a threat. It should have nothing to do with not being able to prove a crime.
Wow.
Nothing to do with not being able to prove a crime. In other words, as he said before, shut up. You don't get a lawyer. And we don't have to prove that you're not doing a crime, or however that works, all these double negatives. I'm confused, Lindsey. How does this work?
Yeah.
It's just pure, I mean, this is tyranny. This is something we should all be very concerned about, because it's all done in secret.
And this is one of those problems that's not right out in the open. So unless it's affecting you, most people probably won't even care about this no-fly list because they're not being affected by it.
Right.
But it's going to be a no-drive list.
And then there'll be a no-work list.
They're conflating the no-fly list with the terror watch list. So people that don't really understand the difference between the two are just automatically assuming it means you're a terrorist and not understanding that children are being put on this list.
And you're being, sequestered by people like TSA agents who really have no idea what the law is anyway and could care less. I had them when I was going to Dresden. They were saying, telling me that the reason we have these body scanners for the underwear bomber. I'm like, look, it's all fake, man. It's all fake. It's all theater. I don't know what more to tell you.
Expose that, yeah.
It's totally ridiculous, but they don't stop.
All right, I'm David Knight. We're going to be right back with Rob Dew and Leanne McAdoo. There is much more to talk about with this. They say, oh, we're not charging you with a crime, so you don't get your due process. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we come back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight with Rob Dew and Leanne McAdoo. We've been talking about the watch list. Watch out, because you may be on that list. You wouldn't know if they put you on the list because they do it in secret. You know, remember the Constitution? Remember the Sixth Amendment? It says you will be given the opportunity to confront your accusers. You'll be able to have a public and speedy trial where you'll get a trial by jury. You'll have a right to a defense attorney, so forth and so on. Why did they do that? Well, they did that, as you all know, because there was a star chamber in England where they would meet secretly and they would indict people and
whisked away in the night.
Yeah, exactly. You disappear in the night. So now we are bringing this back. This is the hallmark of tyranny. This is pre-crime. This is Franz Kafka's bureaucracy where you can't get an answer. It's like, wait a minute, you can't do this or that. Well, I'm on a list? What list? How did I get on the list? What am I charged with? How do I get off the list? I don't know. That's the Kafka aspect of it. It is outright tyranny. And I think really the roots of this, if we want to know where this is coming from, it goes back to the war on drugs. It goes on to civil asset forfeiture, because what they're saying to you is that they don't have to give you due process because they're only putting you on a watch list. And then they're using that watch list to give you punishments. They're saying, we haven't convicted you of a crime. We're not accusing you of any crime. We're just putting you on a list.
We haven't put you in jail yet.
Yeah, exactly.
You just can't fly, can't get a job.
Yeah, you haven't been accused of a crime. And they've used the same legal fiction throughout the war on drugs to say, we're going to take your property. We're not going to charge you with anything. We're just going to take your plane or your house or your car because we think that your plane or your house or your car was possibly and tangentially involved in this crime. But we're not going to charge you with anything. And it's not a criminal action. It's a civil action. And we're just going to call it a forfeiture, not a taking. We're not going to say it's a fine, a penalty. It's a forfeiture. You wanted to forfeiture that, right? And it's a civil action. So that means that if you want to clear your, if you want to get your property back, you have to sue them. They're not going to provide you with a lawyer. You'll have to provide the capital to sue them. to get your property back that they have stolen.
And they have unlimited money,
yes.
which is your money,
yes.
to fight that.
That makes me so angry.
And they usually win.
Interestingly enough, we just had a case come up here in the state of Texas, June 10th. We had the Supreme Court here in Texas say, no, illegal searches are okay and can be used for asset forfeiture cases. So an illegal search would throw them out of a criminal conviction, but they could do an illegal search and still take your property, like this car. They said, no, I think that it would punish the law enforcement too much. We already punish law enforcement by not letting them get a conviction. This is what the Supreme Court here in Texas said. We're already punishing law enforcement by denying their conviction, so we don't want to punish them by taking away the stuff they're stealing from you. It's like, what about the punishment of the people?
Right.
That's absolutely insane.
We're always last on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why we just saw this article, and we talked about, this is something we talked about years ago.
Yeah.
Feds quietly consider reviving EPA's human testing program. This is where they put people in a room and literally turn on diesel engines and run fumes. Tailpipe. Yeah, they hook up the tailpipe and they run it right into a room, and you sit and breathe it, and they go, we're going to see how you react.
That does mess up your brain.
And what's even worse about that, Rob, was they were selecting and screening for people who already had respiratory issues and heart issues because they wanted to show an effect, a dramatic
Pollution
effect.
Is bad.
Yeah, we had Lisa Jackson, who was head of the EPA at the time, had testified before Congress. She said, no, these fine particulate matter levels that we're talking about, we're not just talking about making people sick, we're talking about death. And then they expose people to 70 times that level so they can ratchet up the regulations. And so it's like this catch-22. It's like, well, you're lying to us in Congress, or are you deliberately doing some kind of Joseph Mengele experiment on people?
And if you look at the weather modification laws that they have written, they can do all this as long as it's in a testing phase. So they can test on us all day long as long as they say, we're just testing. Yeah, we're just testing on it.
Just running some tests.
Oh, what's falling from the sky? Well, it's just a test. You know,
this is a test. If this were a real genocide, you would be dead by now. But stay tuned for those results.
We're going to slow kill you because we want your tax money, you slave. So David, wake up out there. Wake up.
That's right. David Knight, Rob Dew, and Leanne McAdoo. And join us tonight for the InfoWars Nightly News.
Jakari Jackson.
7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. That Jakari Jackson will be there for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I train hard. I work hard. I'm always looking for the best way to be the best version of myself. During Special Forces selection, it's not like you could ever take the easy road. You can't take steroids to make, being a Special Forces operator easy. I'm always looking for the best and natural way to get myself to the limit. That's the idea of getting in there and doing real hard work, is changing who you are, becoming better, stronger, faster, and ultimately harder to kill. I have to have the edge over my opponents. I believe that InfoWars products, Super Male Vitality, that gives me the edge. I've been taking it, and I'm still getting faster and stronger every day.
Start your journey to Super Male Vitality today at InfoWarsLife.com.